So you may actually wonder, why your performance sucks even if you are working hard, you're doing, the right thing, and everything seems sucking, right? So, I will title this video something like, why your brain is fucked, why your performance is fucked, only because, I noticed that everything that comes to a result 90% of the time has nothing to do with the tactical and technical stuff, right? So the first thing that I just want to talk about you is, about fixing your stuff, right? And what I mean by so is, controlling your inputs, right? From everything that you got, everything that, you are stimulating from the news, the social networks, everything around has to be, at least intentional in what you do, right? Starting from the diet. So this is something that I myself struggled like a little bit in the past, and truth be told, it has nothing to do with really particular stuff. But by the time I learned, by focus on the principle, I would actually get more result faster. Everything you do has an unequal reaction to result and the decision that you're gonna have. So what I mean by so when it comes to the food is when it comes to the procedures, when it comes to the processed stuff, when it comes to sugar, when it comes to alcohol, right? Because at the end of the day, it actually kills the brain cells, right? So there's nothing really good about it, right? There's nothing wrong with celebrating stuff with this and that, or you're rewarding yourself, right? But at the same time, your mind should be your focus, should be your most valuable tool, and actually is your most unfair advantage that you have. So why are you trying to sabotage it in any sort of way, right? So really simple stuff: diet, sleep at the same time, 7 to 8 hours, not something that you got to monitor like a machine, but at the same time, like, that's the minimum that you actually to do in order to perform, right? I'm not saying you have to, don't go party on that day, don't go, I don't know, stay up late, that kind of day, right? But on a daily basis, consistency is going to be much more rewarding than, overall sprints that actually bring you nowhere, right? So very simple stuff, very practical stuff. And when it comes to the biological stuff, as I was saying before, also comes to every input, digital input that you got, right? Especially in this era, in this age that we are living in, right? Everything around you is gonna, in any sort of way, influence your perception, how you see things, and as a consequence, or your actions and your result, right? Because at the end of the day, we are gonna end up being the sum of the environment that we're gonna align to, right? So not just friends, family, whatever, but especially in this area, I would say easily, when it comes to the news, the social media news, like, are these things really necessary in order to achieve what you're trying to achieve, right? And once you get, your biological state in a good way, right, in a good shape, I'm not saying, it must be, excellent, right? It must be, a Brian Johnson style, right? But at least a good way, right? You can actually think what are the conditions that are the best in order to achieve, in order to accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish, right? So first of all, you need to have a direction, right? If you think about it, like, that's basically you and what you're trying to achieve, right? And there's a basic line in what you're trying to achieve, and most people are just flying around this or that circle and that, when most of the time it's just a straight line in order to achieve what you're trying to accomplish. So set realistic goals, long-term goals for the next 10, 20, 30 years goal. And honestly, it doesn't matter what you are going to set, because that's a big timeline in order to achieve what you want, right? The concept and the reason behind it, and I've been into it, is actually having a clear direction, so you don't actually feel lost in what you're trying to do. And when it comes to the day-to-day things, that you can actually do, right? It's actually optimizing your environment in order to do that, right? Just like, putting a lion in Antarctic will actually, make it distinguish, right? The same thing can be yourself. Let's suppose that, you're a tennis player, right? Let's suppose that you're playing around, and you are trying to be the best at it, right? And you're in your classic hometown, and you're good, but that can be done, right? So it's the same thing. And something that I fuck up a lot in the past, right? I'm telling you, this a thing that a lot of people made the mistake of is, thinking of changing everything from day to night, right? Once you have a direction, the worst thing that could happen is actually changing everything that you're doing from today, right? Everything that you did from the past, right? Just change one variable at a time, right? Like a scientist, like in the scientific method. Okay, one thing doesn't work. Okay, what I'm going to do about that, right? Just one little variable every time, every cycle, every single day in order to, to see what are the kind of result, right? So the worst thing is actually, changing everything from one day to another, right? And over the years you actually, master the way you see yourself, to hard work, right, to the grind. And one of the things that you are going to see is actually, what is actually, a good balance between chaos and the everyday order that I could have, right? Because let's be honest, if something is extremely bored, why are you actually doing it, right? But at the same time, it's something it's too chaotic, like no one could get in. So you have to balance, your order with, even with randomness. Like I did it for myself, even when I don't know what actually task I have to do, right? And instead of, procrastinating or thinking about over and over again, right, what I'm trying to do, I can simply roll dice and decide what I'm trying to do, right? It's not something that I do every single day, but especially if you don't know what to do, like it's better to commit and disagree at it, right? Because this is something that not gonna make you lose realistically something, right? Velocity and speed is much more important rather than, taking a little small decision through all the process. Probably every time that, you are gonna get up and don't want to actually get up, or every single micro thing that you do and you don't actually want to do, right? There's a really good opposition between, what actually you hate and love, right? You must love the game, you must love what you're trying to do, right? What you're trying to accomplish, and not just for the sake of the result, but for the love of the game. How much sucks doing the footwork that, probably no one would ever fucking see, right? How much sucks, pay the things that you are going to pay alone and have all the kind of headache that you have in your mind, right? That's fucking boring, to be honest. At the same time, the most successful people, they also do the thing that they don't love, right? I'm not saying that everything you do you must hate it, right? Absolutely no. But at the same time, of course there are things that you're not going to love, right? So be actually, really accountable and be a good gatekeeper for your brain for yourself, right? All these inputs, all these bad things that are going to happen, right, are just, manifestation of what actually see in most of the times, right? So be the gatekeepers of yourself, and be really careful about what you're trying to, get as an input, right? Because that is gonna have an equal opposite reaction as an output. So hope you enjoyed the video and see you on the next one.